When Kevin Durant joined the Golden State Warriors, he immediately became the new villain of the NBA. While fans of the other 29 franchises were outraged with what appeared to be an unbeatable Warriors team, it was the way that the KD era in Golden State began that upset people the most. In order to fully understand this KD Warriors hatred, we have to go all the way back to 2010 when LeBron joined the Miami Heat. In many people's eyes, this Heat team created what many refer to as the super team, a team with multiple all-star or superstar level talents that usually come together as a result of close bonds between elite players. Nowadays, a large proportion of NBA fans are not in favor of this camaraderie that we see between superstars, as they'd rather see the league's best go at each other rather than joining one another. However, the super team has never been foolproof. As for every successful Miami Heat super team, there has been a failed Los Angeles Lakers or Brooklyn Nets super team. The reason for this is quite simple. The super team has and never will be organic. While super teams always look good on paper, the chemistry isn't always great, causing certain super teams to implode and ultimately disappoint. While people were furious with LeBron's decision to join the Heat, in retrospect we can see that he was taking a risk, as these types of squads don't always succeed. In the case of KD's move to Golden State, there didn't appear to be much risk. The Warriors were already a great team without him, winning a championship, having the first unanimous MVP in Steph Curry, and breaking the regular season win record in the 2 seasons prior to KD's arrival. Considering Durant has been one of the greatest and most versatile scorers ever, it's easy to see why the consensus was that he'd fit in quite well in Golden State. As expected, the Warriors were a dominant team with KD, Steph, Klay, Draymond, and a collection of good role players. They went on to win back-to-back championships, and if not for some unfortunate injuries, they could have been the first team to three-peat since the Shaq and Kobe Lakers. Even though KD was a 2-time Finals MVP on these Warriors teams, he still never got the credit he thought he would get. Despite being a 2-time champion, the narrative was and still is that KD hopped on a bandwagon and that he can't win a ring on his own team. Earlier this year, Draymond did an interview where he shed some light on Durant's decision to leave Golden State. According to Draymond, he felt that KD was disappointed with the lack of respect he was being given after winning that first championship with the Warriors. Essentially, Durant was upset with the fact that many were discrediting his rings and that people in the media were still pushing the idea that LeBron was the best player in the world. While we can't say for sure what his motivations were for leaving Golden State and going to Brooklyn, Draymond's argument makes sense. Throughout his career, KD has been labeled as a thin-skinned superstar. Whether it was his displeasure with the media, his frustration with being labeled second best throughout his career, or his use of burner accounts to argue with people on Twitter, KD has come across as a guy that cares a lot about the way he's perceived. With that in mind, we can start to see why he chose to go to Brooklyn. No recent championship or playoff success, no superstar talent already on the roster, and no guarantee that a move there would result in a ring. It was the perfect situation for KD to earn the respect of everyone in the basketball world. With the recent James Harden trade becoming official, the Brooklyn Nets can now be considered a super team if they weren't already. However, as I discussed, a super team isn't foolproof and there are still challenges involved in winning on a team like this. With this Nets team in particular, there are a lot of obstacles to overcome. First of all, there are concerns about how this team is going to be on the defensive end, especially after they gave up guys like Jared Allen, Taurean Prince, and Karis LeVert, who all have ability on defense. Next, there's the offensive fit. Despite the fact that this team has obvious offensive talent, there is a fear that it won't be as effective as expected. Currently on this roster, the Nets have 3 players that rank in the top 16 in terms of all-time usage percentage. When the LeBron-led Miami and Cleveland teams won championships, Chris Bosh and Kevin Love sacrificed and embraced their role as being third in the hierarchy. The same can be said for Draymond Green and later Klay Thompson in Golden State. Initially, Kyrie seems to be the guy that should be the third star on this team, but can we be sure that he's going to accept that role? That brings us into the third obstacle that this Brooklyn Nets team will have to overcome, and that's chemistry issues. As of right now, Brooklyn is in a bit of a weird place. Nobody seems to know what's going on with Kyrie and whether he's even going to come back and play this year. We don't know if Steve Nash will be the head coach by the end of the season, and we don't know if Kyrie, Harden, and KD will get along now that they've achieved so much individual success in their careers. There's immense potential with this team, but there's no denying that there's also a chance that this idea completely backfires if they aren't able to overcome any of these three obstacles. We know how much the Nets gave up to create this big three, so it really is championship or bust for this team. As the best player on this team, Kevin Durant will receive most of the blame or the praise depending on what happens to this team come playoff time. Throughout his NBA career, KD has always been viewed as one of the best players in the league. He could retire today and he would be put in the 10 to 20 range when discussing his all-time ranking. However, many people would say that as a talent, KD is easily top 10 of all time. But as we know, talent isn't everything when debating where to rank a player. When you look at some of the greatest players of all time like Jordan, LeBron, Kobe, Magic, Kareem, Bird, and so on, you notice one thing in particular. All of them are winners, and if you took those guys off of their championship winning teams, those teams would not have won rings in those years. Despite being a two-time Finals MVP, KD isn't viewed in the same light as these players because his rings came as a result of him joining a championship team. He definitely made the Warriors better, but the argument could be made that the Warriors would have won those rings in 2017 and 2018 even if Durant never signed with them. Brooklyn is a different story though. If KD is able to win a championship as the best player on a team mired in off-court drama with real questions about how the pieces fit, the narrative will have changed. No longer will he be viewed as a follower. If Kevin Durant wins a championship in Brooklyn, he will cement his legacy as not only the greatest scorer the sport has ever seen, but a borderline top 5 player of all time as well.